Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Winnipeg Sports Talk post-game reaction. This is a brand new piece of content that we have for you here on the Winnipeg Sports Talk channel this season. It's going to be some combination of me, Hrabchak, Lyss Houde, who's going to join me on today's episode, and Michael Remus will jump in sometimes as well throughout the season. It's going to be a quick, instant reaction to the game. We've got some fun segments coming up as well. Just a quick programming note. Every single Saturday, there won't be a post-game show. So for the Saturday games, we would just advise you to tune in 9 a.m. WST Sunday Live. Lyss and I go live every single Sunday. So tune in there. There won't be post-games for Saturday games, but every other game throughout the season, we will have you covered with our thoughts from the game. And this was game 1 of 82 as the Winnipeg Jets took on the Dallas Stars and dropped this one 5-4. So let's bring in Lyss Houde, my co-host on WST Sunday Live, and now my co-host on the Winnipeg Sports Talk post-game reaction. Lyss, what a way to start the season. I mean, it looked dry for a minute there when the Jets were down 5-1, but they crawled back, they made it a game, and it was an entertaining night from start to finish with the introductions to the end of the game.
All happy to be back, right? You know, it's been a long summer. I think a lot of us are itching to get back to the rink, and because of that, I think I was just happy to watch some Winnipeg Jets hockey. And as the first period kind of dragged on a bit, second period, I was like, okay, this is Winnipeg Jets hockey to a degree, I guess. But then as we started, getting into that third period, started getting a couple of those goals that I'm sure we'll get into pretty soon, I was like, this feels more like it. The energy, the crowd was in it from the beginning. I will give them credit for that. Those, the player intros and everything beyond that, they were fantastic. And it was a really fun hockey game to watch. Kind of the novelty was there for the first bit. I was just like, happy to be back. And eventually, as I was starting to be like, okay, I'd like to see a little bit more here, I did indeed see a little bit more. So it was a blast tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And it, like I said, it started from before puck drop, and we won't spend too much time on that, but go check out the Winnipeg Sports Talk Twitter account. Jonathan Toews, the introduction, the ovation that he got, the raising of the banners, or the unveiling of the banners, I should say. They didn't physically raise them, but the President's Trophy banners, banner, the Central Division Champion banner, a lot of pregame ceremonies in this one. But getting to the actual game list, the Winnipeg Jets dropped this one 5-4. Like I said, they had a valiant effort coming back in the game. Being down 5-1, they scored 2 shorthanded goals. They went bang-bang on shorthanded goals, with Morgan Barron scoring one and then Kyle Connor scoring his second of what was a hat trick. We'll get into that a little bit later on, I'm sure. But just your initial takeaways from maybe the biggest reason why the Winnipeg Jets lost this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I spent a little bit of time earlier this season talking about advanced analytics, and we did a little bit of an analytics glossary video and talking about the pros and cons of all these different things. And look, you look at these expected goals numbers and stuff like that, and you're like, hey, Dallas, pretty heavily outplayed the Winnipeg Jets. If it weren't for the last 10 minutes of that third period, these numbers would have been even more staggering between the two parties. Dallas really put the foot down on Winnipeg for a lot of this game. But listen, good teams are able to really capitalize in those smaller moments there. It's the classic moments discussion here, where some of the talent was on full display for some of the Jets in those moments where it really mattered, later in that third in particular. But this doesn't exactly show on a graph per se when Winnipeg generated the most of those expected goals they have there. And frankly, even most of the shots, just general shot share, they were in less than 20 shots, I think, pretty much well into that third period at a certain point, right? So I think that this wasn't necessarily Winnipeg's best performance by any means, but it was a fun game nonetheless.
Yeah, they made it entertaining. They made it fun, but I agree with you. They looked far from that Jennings Trophy defensive structure shutdown team that they've been. And despite giving up 5 goals, it felt like Connor Hellebuyck kept them in this game at times. It could have been a lot worse, I feel like. And if you disagree with our assessment, we'll point you to the coach here. We do have some comments from Scott Arneal. Here's what he had to say, his thoughts on just the game in general.
From your game.
Well, I certainly have to give Dallas credit, but for 50 minutes, we weren't a very good hockey team. Our structure and our detail in all 3 areas wasn't very good, and it's too good of a hockey team to make those kind of mistakes. And the shorthanded goals sparked us and kind of got a little bit more urgency into us, and won a few more battles and did a little bit more of the things that we needed to do for the first 50 minutes.
So there it is, Scott Arniel with his comments right after the game. Lyss and I were obviously at the game covering in that scrum, talking to Scott Arniel after the game. And Lyss, I'll let you maybe tee up this next clip that we have because it's something that you noticed throughout the game and something that when Scott Arniel said it after the game, I'm referring to his comment on entries, you kind of, it clicked for you that this is it's something that the Winnipeg Jets really struggled with in this game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. After that scrum was finished, Connor and I kind of had a brief chat to talk about what we wanted to talk about here. And I was like, we have to clip that part here that Connor will bring up in a second here with Scott talking about the entries. And, it wasn't a great night for the Winnipeg Jets in terms of breaking up plays on their own blue line. And then we'll see. Let us know what Scott has to say here.
Yeah, here he is.
In terms of personnel, like what goes into this level?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. I think that we have capable people that are out there and that are playing that if we're better with our structure and our details, we're not giving up those looks. They scored 3 goals off entries. That's not us. We don't give up those plays where that guy is dead center in the middle of the ice getting a chance to score or to get a look on net. So, you know what? It's again, I was totally unexpected. At the end of the day, we'll look at it, and there's some areas we certainly have to clean up.
So there's Scott Arniel once again, this time talking about entries, and he had the comment in there saying, we gave up 3 goals on entries, that's not us. And I gotta say, a lot of the things that we spent training camp talking about, Lyss, in terms of Dylan Sandberg's injury, Cole Perfetti's injury, I said to you halfway through the third period, before the Jets staged this miraculous comeback, which they did, and they did make it close, I leaned over and said to you, it feels like all the concerns we've had with this team, with the injuries, losing Dylan Sandberg, losing Cole Perfetti, there was no secondary scoring punch at that point. And you could argue for the whole game because Kyle Connor had a hat trick. Dylan Sandberg, one of the best defenders on entries in the entire NHL, not just the Winnipeg Jets defense core. And it felt like all of those injuries, and Adam Lowry, of course, who's not going to be back until roughly November 1st, it felt like the concerns with this team were kind of validated through the first bit of this game. And then obviously Kyle Connor led the miraculous comeback that they fell just short. But Lyss, what did you notice on the entries point of view? And do you agree with Scott Arniel that that's not Winnipeg Jets hockey?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, we've talked at length about what the absence of Dylan Sandberg looks like for this group. And that's one of them, right? And I think one of the goals that really sticks out in my head, if you're the type of person who likes to circle those particular moments to anchor things on, is I don't actually remember, now that I think about it, who scored the goal, but Matt Duchene had the primary assist, right?
Yes.
And that was one of those easy walks right over that blue line where I believe the pairing on at the time was Hayden Fleury and Luke Schenn, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more there as well. But it was the perfect example of that's not happening if Dylan Sandberg's on the ice there, right? They're positioning in terms of which sides of the ice they were on and where they were tracking the puck as it was coming into the zone was just a little bit off. I don't think it was what they were wanting to do in that particular scenario, right? And I think that, Matt Duchene was able to just kind of waltz right around that particular situation. Holy smokes, we have an animation here.
We've got the edge visualization. So Matt Duchene, 95 with the spin move there around Hayden Fleury, who's got the back check. And this was exactly the goal you're referring to here, Lyss. And yeah, you got Luke Schenn, you got Hayden Fleury kind of trailing. Matt Duchene steps right around Hayden Fleury, turns around and fires a pass to Tyler Seguin, who just kind of taps it in, backdoor, uncontested. Kyle Connor, the number 81 dot there, just a step behind. But this was, to me, I'm glad you brought it up, like the most obvious not Winnipeg Jets hockey thing. Like you just don't see players be able to do spinoramas in the middle of the ice and hit wide open backdoor tap-ins against the Winnipeg Jets. That's just not something you've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think, Scott talked about this as well, where there were some questions from the media in terms of, okay, is this a kind of a reflection of how good Dallas was tonight or how poor you guys were tonight? And I think the answer is always some iteration of both. But,
right.
Scott was pretty vocal about the fact that it is both, because you can't let a team like the Dallas Stars have that much space and uncontested zone entry space like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Matt Duchene is a top half percentile forward on this team, and look what he was able to do with that little bit of extra space there. Hockey is just a game of managing space on the ice, creating it for yourself, taking it away from opponents and all that different stuff. And this is just a perfect example of the Jets not taking away that space that another team that has so many skilled forwards was able to capitalize on.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that was really the story of the game. I do want to give a quick shout out to Kyle Connor. who had the hat trick in this one, of course, and
Not bad,
not bad. Yeah, just signed the $96 million deal. He's having a heck of a week. And I want to give a shout out to Morgan Barron as well. And if we could bring up this NHL Edge goal visualizer once again, I want to show this Barron goal. We'll wait for it to restart here because it's an incredible individual effort, and it made the game 5-2 at the time. So again, we were in the stage of like, oh, this is kind of over. But he tips that puck, wins the race against Mikko Rantanen. A Dallas player steps out of the box. He beats that player too, and then beats Jake Ottinger to the backhand. It was a very typical Morgan Barron goal in which it came out of nowhere, and it was one of the nicest goals you've ever seen, where I just feel like all of his goals are like that. But this was an incredible individual effort. Kyle Connor then scores shorthanded. Kyle Connor then scores again at even strength, and suddenly it was a game. Lyss, what did you think of kind of these back-to-back shorthanded goals? I don't think the Jets did that once at all last year.
Yeah, I mean, this is another example of managing space on the ice, right? In this example, Morgan Barron's the one who's able to get that stick kind of on that puck and win the foot race. That was a concern that a lot of people had with the Dallas Stars last year. I honestly, I'm not going to pretend I have as much of a finger on the pulse with the team this year as I did last year, just because of how early we are in the season. But they don't have the fastest defenders in the world. And I get it that in this particular example, it's Morgan Barron beating Mikko Rantanen in a foot race, who's not necessarily, obviously not a defenseman, but just the fact that, this was a situation in which the Winnipeg Jets were on the penalty kill and Dallas kind of had that pressure on in that forward foot, right? And when you're not expecting to have to fall back, it's, really easy for you to get burnt in a scenario like that, which they did back to back there with two Winnipeg Jets dynamic forwards kind of winning that foot race and just being able to, take it to Jake Ottinger. And those are saves that are really hard to make. But I think especially in that back to back scenario on the same kill, Josh Morrissey's still been in the box this whole time. Yeah. You got to make one of those. Otter, man. Like, I don't know, man. That's that's always my lazy goalie analysis, but sometimes you got to make a save, brother, and everybody can drink, because it's one of my least favorite sayings. But that definitely completely changed the fabric of the rest of that game for the Winnipeg Jets.
Totally. But as we know, and as we've covered on this post-game reaction, it was really the first 50 minutes of this game where the Jets lost it a little too weak on entries, too many players wide open in the slot, very un-Winnipeg Jets-like. And that's, I agree with you, Liz. I think the biggest reason why the Winnipeg Jets lost this game, and it's game 1 of 82. They're without Dylan Sandberg and Adam Lowry. They're best two shutdown players, if you want to argue that. Things like this are going to happen, especially against really good teams like the Dallas Stars. And as you heard in Scott O'Neill's first answer that we played a little bit earlier on, they're going to watch the tape, adjust from this, and hopefully be better Saturday against the LA Kings. The last thing I want to talk about, Liz, before we move on to our segments, is Jonathan Toews. First NHL game in 910 days, his Winnipeg Jets debut. How do you think he played?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty special to see the crowd get so excited for him, right? Like, it was impossible. The moment that, it skips over to Jay Richardson saying 3-time Stanley Cup champion, and the crowd was just, I don't know. I'm sure he said some kind things about him there, but folks have been excited about the Jonathan Toews debut for quite some time. And look, I will point out he lost his first face-off of the game, which everyone knows I don't care about that. It was just kind of funny. But look, I thought that there were some moments. He's almost gravitational in the way that I was watching the game today. As soon as he was on the ice, I was like, I want to see what this guy is doing, right? Especially because, everyone's been talking about the accolades of how much better he makes the players around him and all that sort of stuff. It's like, okay, what are the kind of minutia things that are going on here that are, creating out of possession moments and breaking up plays and all these different things, whether it's offensive or defensive. And I thought he looked good. There were some moments, one that we can flag and he was asked about in post-game media was Nikita Chibrikov had an unbelievable pass to him that created one of his best chances of the game. He had another one on the doorstep on the power play, I believe, at some point as well. Like there were some moments, and the crowd wanted it, and I think John wanted it too. But I thought he looked good. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my gosh, this is the piece that they were missing. You can see his leadership and how much better he is than everyone, all these different things. I can't see that yet. It was one game, and this is a 37-year-old guy. Like, it wasn't anything crazy, but like I think that they're definitely on the right track. And I'll give a shout out to Gustav Nyquist and Nikita Chibrikov as well. I thought both of those players, who John spent most of the game playing with, obviously the line blender did come out at some point during that second period, and everyone kind of played with any different pairing and trio combination up there. But I thought both of those players looked pretty good too. And so altogether, there were some moments where, you know, they definitely created some added ozone possession time and stuff like that, where whether it's a turnover that they created or Dallas created themselves, they were able to kind of win those puck battles and things like that. So I think that they're definitely on the right track, and there is definitely a lot of potential for, I think, Jonathan Toews to be a really good contributor to some good forward lines here.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you said there and your assessment on Jonathan Toews. I want to give a shout out to that Nikita Chibrikov pass again, because that was, I mean, Jonathan Toews to have the patience right at the blue line and then fire that pass tape to tape. And Jonathan Toews said after the game that puck jumped on him a little bit, was looking far side and rimmed it around the glass. But I think Winnipeg Jets fans should feel good about this Jonathan Toews performance. 910 days away from the game, and it was his first regular season game. He came in as kind of a question mark too. You know, he was day to day throughout training camp. He tweaked something in one of the preseason games. I thought he showed great poise with the puck. I thought the hands were there, which is obviously a concern for a guy that hasn't played hockey in 2 years. As accomplished as he is, it's still something that could rear its ugly head, if you will, as well as conditioning, and those things will happen over the course of an 82-game season. But I thought he showed great poise with the puck. I thought he won a ton of board battles. I thought he was defensively responsible, and he had some offensive chances too, where, like I said, with the hands thing, you know, that puck jumps on him on that one chance. But as the season goes on, I think Jonathan Toews is going to get better and better in situations like that. So I feel good about the way Jonathan Toews played in this game, and I think Jets fans should too. And again, it's game 1 of 82. He needs to get through this full season. It's going to be a grind. He has acknowledged that. But I think there were more promising signs tonight than I honestly anticipated from Jonathan Toews. I came away impressed from a guy who hasn't played a regular season hockey game in over 900 days. Lyss, let's get to our first segment here, and this is one I'm bringing back from an OG, no longer on our program content list, Winnipeg Jets Weekly. If you watch that, yeah, RIP. If you watch that, I usually put that together every single Monday back in the day. And if you watch that, you'll remember this segment, but let's get right to it.
The hardest working Jet.
This is the hardest working Jet award. Now, when I did Winnipeg Jets Weekly, it was the hardest working Jet of the week, but we're going to do this after every single game, our hardest working Jet of the game. So let us know in the comments down below who your hardest working Jet of the game is, and Lyss and I will have our picks on that award. Kind of a game puck award, if you will. Give the guys the hard hat. You know, the Jets do the jackets after their wins and stuff like that. We're trying to emulate that a little bit with our hardest working Jet of the game. So Lyss, you know, for 50 minutes, we talked about how the Jets were clearly the second best team on the ice. Do you have a candidate? Do you have a choice for hardest working Jet? And who would it be?
Yeah, I think maybe tonight, let's go with Alex Iafallo. And listen,
Nice.
It wasn't a super impressive performance for Alex Iafallo, but in the same breath that it wasn't a super impressive performance for anyone who didn't just sign a $96 million contract the other day. I think that Alex Iafallo, the reason I want to give him this is I'm going to circle one shift in particular, and it happened 5 minutes into the first period. And I know that that's a long time ago and it wasn't a great period by any means, but Alex Iafallo got cut out on a change. He came on a little bit early. Nikita Chibrikov took an early line change. And so out came Alex Iafallo with Jonathan Toews and Gustav Nyquist. They had a really, really nice stretch of ozone possession. And then when Dallas got the puck back, it was not on Alex Iafallo's side. And then the other two forwards were able to switch. And then in came his actual line mates of Vlad Nemestikov and Nino Niederreiter. Shout out to Nino Niederreiter, had a ton of shot attempts tonight and stuff as well. And they had another really good shift where they were kind of able to hem Dallas's defenders into their zone a little bit and stuff. And it just really made me feel positive about Alex Iafallo's contribution to the depth of this group, right? We've spoken about how if they're going to play Connor Scheifele and Velarde and, you know, guys like Cole Perfetti are out on injury, Jonathan Toews, you mentioned day-to-day coming into tonight, that bottom nine is cause for concern. And Alex Iafallo was a guy that has the potential to, whether it be add a little bit to that bottom nine, if he's playing well, create something to write home about with that bottom line, or give a viable option to that top line to split them up a little bit and ensure that they're not necessarily losing their effectiveness, and you're able to drop a guy like Gabe Vilardi down or something like that. He played a couple of different practices and line rushes in training camp with some other line mates. So I'm going to give him my hardest working Jet award, just because I think that there were some flashes, whether it be at 5-on-5 in a play like I mentioned there, or even on the power play, where it's like, okay, there's definitely a little bit of a force to be reckoned with here. I thought he had an interesting game kind of across the board.
I agree with the Alex Iafallo pick. I like that one. I thought, he's always a guy that's in the mix and one of the better forecheckers on the Winnipeg Jets, game in and game out. And I thought that there were definitely moments in this game where he did that and got to that game. And that line is really, they have the potential to be a dominant forechecking line with Niederreiter, Nemestikov, and Iafallo. All three of them have that club in their bag. And Niederreiter, you brought him up. Shout out to him as well. Ton of shot attempts tonight. Was always in the right spots. Solid game from Nino. My hardest working Jet of the game is going to be Morgan Barron. And I'm going to give it to him based off that goal. I mean, I don't love giving this award. If you watch Jets Weekly, I don't love giving this award being tied to points and goals and all of those things. But that effort on the penalty kill goal really sparked the comeback for the Jets. I mean, it was 5-1. The building was silent. The Jets were on the penalty kill, and they really had no signs of life. And Morgan Barron was able to steal the puck from Mikko Rantanen, beat him to the puck. A Dallas defender came out of the box, as we showed earlier. He beat that guy, made it all the way to the backhand, and scored one of the nicest goals that Morgan Barron will score this year. And I thought it really did spark the Jets. It gave them a little bit of life. And then obviously the Kyle Connor goal shorthanded gave them a lot of life and really got the building into it. But I'm going to give it to Morgan Barron. I thought that one individual effort was incredible. And as always, he skates really well. He hits well. He forechecks well. He's a big part of the penalty kill, which was they let up the one goal tonight. It was a 5-on-3 that had just expired, but 1 for 5 they held the Dallas power play to. I thought it was a pretty good night from the penalty kill, missing Dylan Sandberg, and then Pionk took 2 penalties. That's a guy who's going to kill penalties. DeMello took a penalty. He's on your penalty kill. I thought the penalty kill had a strong night, and I think Morgan Barron had a big reason to do it that. So he's going to get my hardest working Jet of the game.
And I want to contribute to that super quickly, just in regards to a quick little stat line on him. He was put out there for 5 faceoffs tonight, and he won 4 of them. And I believe every single one of them was a D-zone draw on the penalty kill. Ooh, so again, 80% of the faceoff circle is good regardless. Like that's a nice little line to have. But those are key draws to win in particular moments. And he was able to kind of help with the effectiveness of that penalty kill by simply just giving Dallas a little bit less time to mess around with the puck in the O-zone. So I think that was huge. Every single time I was like, oh my gosh, this is a big faceoff. He was the one that was going out there, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, wow. And yeah, he definitely held his own there. So going 80% on the penalty kill face off there. I think they were all on the penalty kill.
Okay.
Least, but,
yeah.
Most of them were. He definitely took at least 3 or 4.
I can vouch for that most of them for sure were on the penalty kill, because I noticed that throughout the game as well. And Lyss, that's our eye test award. And as people know, we love diving into the numbers. We did the analytics glossary. Our second segment on the show is going to be our standout stat of the game. Now, this can be anywhere from, Connor Hellebuck's save percentage or Kyle Connor's goal total. They can be as simple as that, or it can be as complex as something else. And I know Lyss and I throughout the season will have some pretty fun stuff cooked up for this standout stat of the game. Lyss, I'll let you go first on this one. What's your standout stat from tonight's 5-4 loss to the Dallas Stars?
My standout stat of the game is that on the Dallas Stars power play tonight. So this is, 5-on-4 for Dallas. Winnipeg was on the penalty kill. 4.5 minutes. Okay. So that was the Winnipeg Jets controlled 58% of the shots. So Dallas controlled 42% of the shots while they were on the power play.
Wow.
Winnipeg had 7 shots. Dallas had 5 on the Dallas Stars power play. So my standout stat of the game is 42% of the shots on the Dallas Stars power play belonging to the Dallas Stars.
That is an unbelievable stat. And I talked about the penalty kill there. I didn't that, they had that juice. And I do want to say, not to overanalyze it because it's a bit of a, small sample goofy stat, but all of these are going to be.
Well, and because one of them, like Kyle Connor, I would assume counts for 2 of those shots, right?
Yeah.
Because he potted his own rebound.
Right. That's 2. Yeah, absolutely. So it's things like that.
That's the beauty of this gorgeous, beautiful, perfect segment.
Exactly. But another reason I want to vouch for that stat, if you will, is because the Jets the past 2 years under Scott Arniel have gone to this sort of power kill with whether it's Nikolai Ehlers getting a shift last year or this year, Connor and Scheifele being out there. Kyle Connor had a great chance before he made the game 5-3 and Jake Ottinger stopped him. And then Mark Scheifele chipped it to him again and he got those 2 other shots, the second one of which he netted his own rebound. And the power kill is just such a thing that I can't believe the Winnipeg Jets didn't do before Scott Arniel, because since Scott Arniel has done it, throw Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor out there with 30 seconds left in the kill, they're generating chances. They're turning it back on the second power play unit. And it's something that genuinely got the Winnipeg Jets back in this game and gave them a fighter's chance, if you will, late in the game. So I love the power kill. I love that stat list. It's a great submission for the first standout stat of the game of the year. Mine is going to be a little bit more on the simple side. It's Kyle Connor's season opening goal scoring streak. He extended it to 8. It's the wackiest stat ever. He's now scored in 8 straight season opener games. And Kelly Moore from CGOB asked him after the game, what is it about season openers? Is it excitement? You're just so ready to go. And he just said, you probably have a better answer than me. I don't know. So I'm going to go with the wacky stat, that being Kyle Connor and his 8-game season opening goal scoring streak. And as we know, tonight he had 3 of them. One of another great performance, and Jets fans can get used to that for the next 9 years, as his 8-year extension doesn't kick in until next season. Before we wrap today's show list, the Winnipeg Jets' next game is 12:30 Saturday, just after 12 o'clock noon game. Very early start at Canada Life Center against the LA Kings. What are maybe 1 or 2 things that you're going to be watching for as the Jets look to get into the win column for the first time in 2025-26?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we talked about the power kill. We talked about Morgan Barron and Kyle Connor kind of being able to blow past those defenders and get into all those different things. You want to talk about a blue line that you could try and expose? I think that there are some terrifying similarities between LA's defense and Winnipeg's right now, just in the sense that I don't know how much confidence I have in them to completely tighten up that blue line and make it an absolute fortress to try and get into. We saw tonight that Winnipeg was allowing a lot on the zone entry. I believe that the Winnipeg Jets will be able to create a lot on the zone entry against the likes of the Los Angeles Kings defense. So I'm hoping to see a little bit more from them in that regard, whether it be some deep pucks, going in on the forecheck and forcing guys like Brian Dumoulin and Cody Ceci to kind of turn around and get into those corners or trying to burn them off the rush. I think that there's some potential for them to highlight their fast forwards and some of their more skilled zone entry guys and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I'll be watching for on Saturday.
Yeah, I like that answer. The LA Kings so far this season have played 2 games. They played the Colorado Avalanche on opening night, and they lost that game. Yeah, Jeff Malott. Yeah.
And goal.
He got a goal. He got his first career goal, yes, in the second game. So the first game of the year. No. The first game of the year, the Kings lost 4-1 to the Avs. The Avs just rolled them. They looked great on that night. Colorado did. And then the very next night, LA starting the season with a back-to-back. They went to Vegas, took on the Golden Knights, and were down 5-3 late in the third, staged a comeback and won in a shootout. So they won 6-5 against Vegas. Those are their 2 games so far this season. And now they're going to take on the Winnipeg Jets. But I agree with you, Liz. I think LA does have a blue line that you can exploit at times. And I'm going to be watching for the Jets' bottom 9 in this game. I think the top line with Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Gabe Vilardi, we know they're good. We know that they're going to have to score with Cole Perfetti out and Adam Lowry out, and the depth really being tested. If those 3 players are going to play together, they're going to have nights like they did tonight if the Jets want to have 4 or 5 goals in a game. But LA's defense core I mean, Cody Ceci and Brian Dumoulin on that third pair that you alluded to there, Lyss. I really think that a line like the Niederreiter line can maybe get on the board and maybe shut down their opposition at the same time. So I'm going to be watching for that bottom 9 to see if they can win their minutes, because there's a pretty good chance, even, at home, you control the matchups. Even if the Jets top line is out there against the Kopitar line or the Danault line, you still feel pretty good about their chances to generate offense. But it's the bottom 9 going up against Kopitar or Danault on every other shift. How well, if at all, will they be able to generate some high quality scoring chances? So that's what I'm watching for going forward. Lyss, this was episode 1 of many throughout this season of the WST post-game reaction. Like I said right off the top, no Saturday post-game. So this LA game, for example, coming up on Saturday, there won't be a video like this. There won't be a post-game reaction. We would just like for you to tune in Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. That's when we'll give our thoughts on any Saturday game throughout the season on WST Sunday Live. Lyss and I will be there, of course. So the next time you'll hear from us on the post-game reaction is Monday. The Jets play a Thanksgiving Monday game, noon, on the road against the New York Islanders. We'll be back for the post-game for that. But WST Sunday Live, Lyss, 9 a.m. Tune in, and we'll have our thoughts from the Jets-Kings game Saturday morning, almost after early afternoon at Canada Life Center. So from Lyss Houde, I'm Connor Hrabchak. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching the first episode of the Winnipeg Sports Talk post-game reaction.